Hello everyone. So this is part 1 of NCERT as it is review on environmental chemistry chapter. Now the interesting thing is when you talk about this NCERT as it is series, right? In fact, this idea for a lot of faculties and coaching institutes like Concept Learning, it basically comes when we look at some of the past year papers, right? Even whether it is a NEET or JEE, particularly JEE mains, from chapters like environmental chemistry, chemistry in everyday life, polymers, to some extent even biomolecules, we get questions straight picked up from the NCERT textbook lines. And starting from these chapters, right, the idea has even extended into inorganic, organic chemistry. Even nowadays you see, even we also have made the NCERT as it is videos for some physical chemistry chapters also. Okay, so that is some background, but yeah. So what is this environmental chemistry? We are basically talking about, so in the context of higher levels of chemistry or chemical engineering, you will see that whenever you are designing a chemical process or any, trying to come up with an manufacturing method, you will always be keeping in mind what are the wastes or what are the emissions and what is the kind of an harmful effect the emissions can potentially have. Maybe the harmful effects might be immediately noticeable or they might be happening over a period of time, but nevertheless we will have to take into account what are all the effects, the wastes or the emissions that we will release into the surroundings will have on the environment. So first let's just start with what is this environmental study. So environmental study is a broad umbrella where we will talk about the interrelations between us as human beings and our surroundings. We talk about social, we talk about economical, we talk about biological, physical, chemical. But here in our environmental chemistry, we will focus on the chemistry related aspects. So environmental chemistry deals with what? The study of origin, transport, reactions and effects of the chemical species in our environment. Chemical species have been there in the environment. Some of them are introduced by our activity. But what we are going to be most concerned about is the idea of what we call as environmental pollution. Environmental chemistry is a study of the chemical species present in the environment. But our focus will be mostly on, at least in the +1 chapter of environmental chemistry, we will focus mostly on what the concept of environmental pollution. What do we call as an environmental pollution? Whenever we see an undesirable change in our surroundings, which can have a harmful effect on plants, animals or human beings. That is what we call as environmental pollution. Even sometimes, these definitions also can be picked up as question. So the substance which is causing this pollution, right, that is what we will be calling as a pollutant. So how do you define a pollutant, or what can be a pollutant? First of all, pollutant can be a solid, pollutant can be a liquid, it can be even a gas. So pollutant can have any of these three states. But yeah, how do we define a pollutant? It is basically a substance which is present in greater concentration than its natural abundance. Means what? Suppose we talk about carbon dioxide itself. It is already there in the atmosphere. Maybe 0.03% by volume in the overall atmosphere. Because of the human activity, if the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is increasing, right, it is going to create some imbalance, and that is what we will see. One of the major impact of this will be what we call as a greenhouse effect, where the overall temperature levels on the surface of the earth will be increasing because of the greenhouse effect. How it happens, all these things we will study later, but just to get the idea, So the natural equilibrium, we can call it. Equilibrium means it is not like there is a reaction or anything, but there will be natural equilibrium that will balance the amounts of these substances in our surroundings. But if that is disturbed, right, either because of the human activity, most of the cases, or sometimes the natural phenomena also can cause it. But mainly we will try to focus on the human activity part of it. So this is what we will be calling as a pollutant. Now when we talk about the environment, it's basically our surroundings, right? When we say the environmental pollution part of it, the first thing that we as human beings will be most concerned is which one is going to affect us most. Like, if air is polluted, are we going to get affected the most? Or if the soil is polluted, are we going to get affected the most? Or if the water is polluted, are we going to get affected the most? In fact, to speak in more crude manner, so what we as human beings are more concerned, we take air, we take food, and of course we take water. So we will be more concerned about which pollution is going to be more kind of an showing effect on our existence. So to understand this, right, let's just view what is the kind of amount of substances we will require. Like, if you talk about our average human being, right, we will take 12 to 15 times more air than food. So which means even if there is a small amount of pollutant in the air, right, that can cause significant effect on us compared to the pollution in the food. So if there are some pollutants in the air and pollutants in the food that we eat, because we are taking more intake of the air, the effect of that will be more on us. But of course, here in this chapter we will study the pollution in the air. Also we will talk about the pollution in water. So we will talk about all the different aspects of pollution. But talking about the pollutant as such, right, pollutants, we can divide them into two categories broadly. Degradable, like you throw some vegetable or fruit, a spoiled fruit, you just throw it outside into the backyard or someplace. You come and check it after 3-4 days, you will not find almost anything. What is happening? We'll say it is getting what? Decomposed. So the pollutants like that, discarded vegetables, they will be rapidly breaking down by the natural process. So what it is and all, we will not be required to look at those aspects, because of the activity of the bacteria and all that, it will get decomposed. On the other hand, if you throw some plastic tin, or you throw some polythene cover, it is going to stay. Like, you come and check after 10 days, it will be there. So what is it? These pollutants, we should not say that they are non-degradable. What is the word that we will rather put? We will say slowly degradable. In fact, some of these substances, right, they can be there in the environment unchanged for even many decades. So if you look at one such substance, right, this is a very popular one. What is it? DDT, dichlorodiphényl trichloroethane. So we'll talk about this in a while as we go into the details of the chapter. Even plastic materials, heavy metals like lead, tin, even some chemicals and nuclear waste also, they are going to be there in the environment for lot of time to come. So these will be called as what? The non-degradable, but we don't use the word non-degradable, but rather what we will say, they are slowly degradable. And these ones, right, once they are released into the environment, it is difficult to remove them, because these pollutants, right, they cannot be degraded by the natural process. When you look at the process of the environmental pollution, right, it's basically what? The pollutants which are originating from a source, there will be a source, and they will get transported by the means of air or water, and they can get dumped into the soil by the human activity. So this is how we look at the environmental pollution cycle. So we'll start with the first part of the pollution, which is about the atmospheric pollution. In a general way, we can also call it as what air pollution. So what is this atmosphere? Atmosphere is basically the layers of air that is surrounding the surface of the earth. So it's basically the layers of the air that is surrounding the earth. And one thing that we need to understand is these layers, right, will have different density. They'll have different temperature levels. And even we will see in our discussion the type of substances, because there will be gases, of course. The type of gases present in these layers also will vary. We will see all these things. But the lowest region, which is the layer that is just above the surface of the earth, that is what we will be calling as the troposphere. In fact, that is where human beings, all the other organisms will be. So the troposphere is what? It is up to 10 kilometers. And then above that you will have the stratosphere, that is 10 to 50 kilometer. So troposphere is the most turbulent part of it. So where you will have the air with dust particles, there will be a lot of water vapor, clouds, and there will be, of course, the strong air movement. That's why we are calling it as what? More turbulent. There will be cloud formation. Everything happens in the troposphere. The next higher level, which is the stratosphere, right, that contains dinitrogen, dioxin, ozone, and only little water vapor. So the stratosphere, right, from 10 to 50, it will contain what? It will contain dinitrogen, dioxin, ozone. So the ozone, just remember it. So ozone comes where? Ozone comes in the stratosphere. So these are all the possible kind of questions that can be asked. And even in troposphere, the water vapor amount will be more. In stratosphere, the water vapor amount will be less. So when you want to study about the atmospheric pollution, we will divide this into these two categories. One is we will separately study about the pollution in troposphere, and we will separately study about the pollution in the stratosphere. In stratosphere, right, as I said, this ozone presence basically prevents these harmful UV radiations from reaching the earth's surface. About 99.5% of these harmful radiations, they will be prevented from reaching the surface of the earth. And we will talk about what are the harmful effects of the UV, means what? Ultraviolet radiations. Okay, these are the high energy and high frequency radiation compared to visible part of the spectrum. And because almost like 99.5% of the harmful radiations are basically kind of prevented from reaching the surface of the earth, this ozone layer, right, will protect the humans and other animals, even plants also, from the harmful effects of the UV radiations. We will talk about that. We will talk about the ozone layer, and even we will have something called as a depletion of ozone layer. All that we will discuss. So this is about the layers of the atmosphere. So here we are going to be focusing on what? The first layer, which is the troposphere, and then stratosphere. Then above that we have a mesosphere. Above that we will have what? Thermosphere. Above 700 kilometer, right, we will be calling it as what? Exosphere. Okay, so this is how we will divide the layers of the atmosphere. Now let's come to the troposphere part. So when you talk about the troposphere, right, the pollution that is occurring in the troposphere, we will divide this into two categories. One is the pollution because of the gaseous pollutants. Second is the pollution because of the particulate pollutants. So what is it that we will see in the gaseous pollutants? We will talk about the pollution that is happening because of sulfur, nitrogen and carbon oxides. Sulfur means we'll talk about mostly sulfur dioxide. Similarly, carbon means we'll talk about both carbon monoxide as well as carbon dioxide. Then we look at hydrogen sulfide, hydrocarbons, ozone, and other oxidants. What is an oxidant? Oxidant is basically an oxidizing agent. Ozone is also an oxidizing agent. So that is about the gaseous air pollutant. Then the particulate pollution side, we'll talk about the dust, mist, fume, smoke and smog. All these things we'll look at them separately. So this is how we'll try to study the tropospheric pollution. One is the gaseous pollutants part, which is mostly the oxides of sulfur, nitrogen and carbon. Then we have hydrocarbons, ozone, other oxidants including even hydrogen sulfide. Then we'll talk about the particulate pollutants, which is mist. Of course, dust particles will be there, definitely. Fumes will be there, and then smoke and smog. First, let's start with the gaseous pollutants. So, the oxides of sulfur are basically produced because of the combustion of the fossil fuels. Like coal, when you are burning coal, right? Most of the, the sulfur oxides will come from the burning of the coal, because coal contains amount of sulfur. And one of the most common oxides of sulfur that will be released into the atmosphere is sulfur dioxide. It's a poisonous gas which will be harmful to both animals as well as plants. Even low concentration of the sulfur dioxide, right, can cause respiratory diseases. Like we know about asthma. Then we have bronchitis. Bronchitis is basically the nasal passage that will get blocked, causing issues in terms of the breathing. Then we have emphysema. Like if you are a bio student, you will be able to understand all these wordings. Emphysema is basically the the situation of the lungs, where the breathing capacity of the lungs will be reduced. Short, you will not be able to have longer breath. You will be able to only have short breath. So all these are the effects of the sulfur dioxide on humans. And even sulfur dioxide, right, it can cause irritation in the eyes, resulting in tears and redness. See, sometimes, right, these what we call as attributes. So they can frame questions based on the attributes. Like they'll say a poisonous gas which will cause asthma, bronchitis, and even results in tears and redness in eyes. So when they give the attributes, what they are essentially talking about, sulfur dioxide. So like that, they can give the attributes and ask us to find what is the poisonous gas, like that. So these kind of questions also we should be ready with. Now the high concentration of SO2, right, can lead to even the disturbance in terms of the activity of the plants. Like it will lead to the stiffness of flower buds, and that will eventually make the flower buds to fall off from the plants. So if you look at what can happen further with the sulfur dioxide, right, it can undergo oxidation. But the normal oxidation, uncatalyzed oxidation, will be a slow process. But since in the troposphere will have the particulate matter, because it will be having all the dust, etc., that can catalyze the oxidation, and the oxidation will be enhanced in terms of the rate. So the sulfur dioxide, when it is oxidized, right, it will be able to form sulfur trioxide. And if some amount of ozone is present, that can also enhance the oxidation rate. Even hydrogen peroxide, right, that can also enhance the oxidation rate. But what happens here is we should be getting what, SO3 plus H2O, right? So that SO3 will combine with water to give us what, H2SO4. So this is how we will see the sulfur dioxide as a pollutant. Then coming to the oxides of nitrogen, right? We know very well that N2 and O2, these are the main components of the air, right? But what happens is they will not be able to react with each other so easily. So if you are looking at the higher altitudes where we'll have the lightning strikes etc., that can make these nitrogen and oxygen to combine to give us what? The oxides of nitrogen. NO2, nitrogen dioxide, right, is one of the oxides of nitrogen. NO2 can further, and also we have others like we have nitric oxide, we have nitrous oxide, all the others are also what? The oxides of nitrogen. The NO2 can further get oxidized into nitrate ion, NO3 minus. This will be washed into the soil where it will be serving as a fertilizer. So nitrate ions are what? They will be able to, they are, in fact, if you look at most of the common fertilizers, right, you'll have the nitrate component in that. That is one way in which the oxides of nitrogen will get produced. There is another way. In automobile engine, right, when you have very high temperature, there also the nitrogen and oxygen, they can combine to yield the oxides. Like I said, nitric oxide, even nitrogen dioxide. So if you look at the reaction, right, when you have very high temperature, that will be able to give us what? Nitric oxide. And the nitric oxide can combine with some more amount of oxygen to give us what? Nitrogen dioxide. Now the thing is, when you are having the automobile exhaust, like say this is the automobile exhaust, right? If the automobile exhaust is very hot, the temperature is so high, then even the nitrogen and oxygen present in the atmosphere surrounding, right, they also can combine. That also can give rise to what? The oxides of nitrogen. That also can happen. But if you look at the conversion of nitric oxide into nitrogen dioxide, right, that will be happening at a faster rate when there is ozone present in the stratosphere. So ozone can oxidize nitric oxide easily into nitrogen dioxide. So what are the attributes? Remember I said, this is a possible area for the questions. What are the attributes? The attributes, the irritant red haze that you see in the traffic. Sometimes, when you see in this traffic signal, near the traffic signal from a long distance, right, you will see that red haze, or congested places with vehicles, right. All this is because of what? The oxides of the nitrogen. Higher concentrations of NO2, right, can damage the leaves of the plant. They can retard the rate of photosynthesis. Remember, photosynthesis is required for the plants to synthesize their food, where you will have the carbon dioxide and water vapor, they will be combining to give the glucose, and of course oxygen. That is how the oxygen content in the atmosphere will be replenished, isn't it? So the higher concentrations of NO2 can damage the leaves of the plant. It can also retard the rate of photosynthesis. For us human beings, particularly, the nitrogen dioxide is a lung irritant, and it can cause some acute respiratory diseases in children as well. It is also toxic to the living tissues. See, all these, these are all minor attributes. You may not find them as question material, but that one, right, remember, the irritant red haze in the traffic signal. So that these are the the words typically that are used for framing the questions. Not only that, the nitrogen dioxide rate can also be harmful for textile fibers, even to the metals, etc. So this is about the story of oxides of nitrogen. Then coming to the hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons means what? These are the compounds formed between carbon and hydrogen. They are there. In fact, water fuels, whether you take gasoline, diesel, all these are what? They are all hydrocarbons. But why are you talking about hydrocarbon as a pollutant? Because due to the incomplete combustion of the fuel, right, in automobiles, these hydrocarbons will be released. And some of these hydrocarbons, right, they are carcinogenic also. Carcinogenic means what? They can cause cancer. Not only that, they will be able to harm plants. They can cause the breakdown of the tissues, shedding of the leaves, flowers, and even twig. Now, what is twig? These are the, what is a twig? For plants, right? especially the dry plants, when you see the short stem that they will have, that's what we call as a twig. So that can lead to what? The shedding of the leaves, flowers, as well as the twigs of the plants. Now coming to the oxides of carbon, so these are two important ones. Carbon monoxide, right? It is one of the very most serious pollutant. We will see why. It will be a neutral oxide. Carbon dioxide is what? Acidic, but carbon monoxide is neutral. It will be a colorless, odorless gas, and it is highly poisonous. Why? Because its ability to block the delivery of the oxygen to the organs and tissues. We will see why it be able to block the delivery of oxygen to the organs and tissues. First, know how it is produced. It is produced as a result of the incomplete combustion of carbon. Complete combustion means what? We will get carbon dioxide, but here it is produced because of the incomplete combustion. And what are the sources of combustion? Mainly we will talk about what? Automobile exhaust. Because of the the old engine or whatever the reasons, right? We will be having the incomplete combustion, and that is also, in a way economically not very effective, because complete combustion will be able to give us a more amount of energy. Incomplete combustion will give only less amount of energy. Okay, that is a different thing, but yeah. Now the other sources of carbon monoxide can be what? The incomplete combustion of coal, firewood, petrol. All these will be able to give us the carbon monoxide. And generally, when you look at the number of vehicles in the cities, or we talk about number of cars in a city, it is doubling in 5-year period, etc. So all these things will be adding up to the amount of carbon monoxide pollutant that is being released into the atmosphere. And as I said, right, the poor maintenance of these vehicles and inadequate pollution control equipment, all these things will be resulting in what? Greater amount of the carbon monoxide, because improper combustion will always give us what? Carbon monoxide. Now we said it is more poisonous. Why? Because it will be binding to the hemoglobin. So for the oxygen transport in our body, hemoglobin will form a binding with the oxygen. That's what we call as oxyhemoglobin, and that way the oxygen will be transported. But when the carbon monoxide is binding to hemoglobin, right, it will be forming carboxyhemoglobin. It will be a stronger bonding. How many times? 300 times stronger, or we can say 300 times more stable than the oxyhemoglobin. So oxygen will be attached, and once the blood is moving to the organs and tissues, the oxygen will be detached, so that the oxygen is made available for the organs and tissues. But here what is happening? Because of the carbon monoxide forming the complex with hemoglobin, that complex cannot be broken easily, which means what? The amount of hemoglobin that is available for the carry of the oxygen will get reduced. And even like if you have 3 to 4% of the hemoglobin, which is in the form of carboxyhemoglobin, then we will see that the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood will be greatly reduced. There are a lot of stories of if you look at Sherlock Holmes movies and all that, you will see somebody will try to kill a family who is sleeping, because in European countries and all, you will have these chimneys, to keep the house warm, right? They'll have a chimney. So if you cover all the openings in the house and there is a chimney inside, what happens? It is burning firewood, right? So the amount of oxygen that is available will become lesser and lesser. So you will see that more amount of carbon monoxide will be getting released. So the people who are sleeping inside, right, they keep on inhaling the carbon monoxide, and in the sleep itself their oxygen carrying capacity of the blood will become so less that first they will probably lose the consciousness, and then they will have a death also. So if you are interested, just go and look at, there are, I have just come across one such movie where they talk about some entire family being killed in that way. But I mean, I don't know if it's a good example to talk about here or not, but yeah. So that's how the carbon monoxide can be lethal. That is the importance of it. Okay. Now looking at the carbon monoxide impact on us, the oxygen deficiency rate, whenever we are inhaling more of carbon monoxide, that will result in what? Oxygen deficiency. It will result in headache, weak eyesight, nervousness, and cardiovascular disorder. That's the reason why, right, we'll say not to smoke, particularly for the pregnant women. So where if the carbon monoxide levels in the blood are increasing, right, that can lead to very extreme conditions like premature birth, even spontaneous abortion, and even deformed babies formation. Okay, so all these things will be the effect of increased CO level in the blood for the pregnant woman. The other oxide of carbon is carbon dioxide. So how do we get it? Yes, by the combustion or burning of the fossil fuels we will get it, and also it will come because of respiration. Because when we do respiration, right, what is the product of the respiration? It is carbon dioxide, right? And also because of the decomposition of the limestone. What is limestone? Calcium carbonate. In various industrial process, like even in the manufacture of cement also, we will basically do what? Decomposing of the limestone. So it will give us what? Calcium oxide solid and CO2 gas. So that will come in the decomposition of the limestone. Even during the volcanic eruptions also, that is a natural phenomena. Remember what we said? The pollutant can be released by the human activity, or it can even be released by the natural phenomena also. Here the volcanic eruptions, right, that is a natural phenomena. The thing is, carbon dioxide, right, is confined only to the troposphere. So these are the points where the questions can be framed. And look at what is the amount of it. It is 0.03% by volume of the entire atmosphere. That's the amount of carbon dioxide. So if you are using more of the fossil fuels, what we will see that more of burning that is happening, more of industries which are decomposing limestone. As a result of all these things, what we will see, more and more CO2 will be released into the atmosphere. So what happens if we are having the CO2 in the atmosphere? So the CO2 in the atmosphere, right, will be removed by the green plants. So green plants, they will require CO2 for the photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is where the carbon dioxide will combine with the water vapor. The green pigment chlorophyll will facilitate the process, and the plant will be able to synthesize glucose. Of course, along with that, it will be able to emit oxygen. So this is how the balance is maintained. But if you're talking about deforestation, where the number of green plants is reduced, and burning of fossil fuel, where the CO2 is increasing, this cycle gets disturbed. And this will result in what? A net increase in the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. And this will be resulting in what we call as global warming. So global warming is a general word that is used to represent the overall increase in the temperature. This global warming rate is caused by an effect which we call as a greenhouse effect. The CO2 is one of the major contributor for that. Other than that, we have other gases also. We'll talk about them. If you see what actually happens when the solar heat from solar radiation is reaching the earth, about 70% of this rate will be absorbed by the earth. Like we have the earth, about 75% of this will be absorbed. The rest of it will be reflected. And when it is absorbing, it will be used in terms of increasing the temperature of the earth, and then it will start radiating. Generally, the radiations, right, will be in the infrared region. So some of the heat that is radiated, right, will be trapped by the gases: carbon dioxide, methane, ozone, chlorofluorocarbon compounds, which we can also call them as freons. We'll talk about them in detail because they will also be responsible for what we call as a the ozone layer depletion. Water vapor also. In fact, we also have nitrous oxide, N2O, that is also a greenhouse gas. So they will trap the heat that is radiated, and as a result of it, what happens? They will be adding heat to the atmosphere. This maintains the warmth of the atmosphere. So this is also a natural cycle. If you look at how do we achieve this greenhouse effect artificially, if you want to cultivate fruits, vegetables in a cold place, right, we'll design a construction with a glass such that the glass will allow all the solar radiation to go in. The plant, soil, everything, they will absorb the radiation. And they will start radiating infrared. Infrared rays is a part of the electromagnetic spectrum. You'll study more about this in, you'll have a chapter in +2 physics called as electromagnetic waves. There you'll study about it. The wavelength of this radiation will be what? Higher than the visible region. So the glass will be transparent to the solar radiation, but it will be opaque to the infrared. So it will not allow the infrared to go through. Part of this it will absorb and the other it will reflect back inside only. So that way artificially we will be able to maintain a higher temperature inside the containment zone. That's what we call as the greenhouse effect. Now if you look at as I said, the cold places, right, flowers and vegetables, fruits, we'll cover them in a glass environment, and this setup is what we will be referring as what? The greenhouse. Of course here on earth we are not covered by any glass or anything, but we have a blanket of air. That's what we call as the atmosphere. This basically the atmosphere by trapping the heat, it will keep the temperature of the earth to be in that constant range for a lot of time. But now this is undergoing a change. We'll see. Okay, so what is the change? Because obviously the change in the amounts of the greenhouse gases. Now just like the glass of the greenhouse is able to hold the sun's warmth inside, the atmosphere will be trapping the sun's heat that is radiated by the earth and keeps the atmosphere also warm. This phenomenon, right, that is what we call as the natural greenhouse effect, because this is required to maintain the temperature, and that is what will make earth to be suitable for the life. So what happens in a greenhouse, the one artificial one that we discussed, solar radiation will be passing through the transparent glass. All the solar radiation, like we discussed, all of it will pass through. Now that will heat up the soil and the plants, whatever they're inside. This warm soil and plant, right, now they will emit infrared radiation. They will be emitting infrared. And this glass will be opaque to the infrared. It will be transparent to the solar radiation, it will be opaque. So it will not allow. So partly it will be reflecting inside and partly it will be absorbing the radiations. Now this mechanism, right, is what keeps the energy of the sun trapped inside the greenhouse. Same concept will be happening in the atmosphere also. These carbon dioxide molecules, right, trap the heat. They are basically transparent to the sunlight, so they allow all the sunlight to come in, but not to the infrared. The heat radiation that is released by the earth, right, they will not be transparent. So they will basically be able to trap the heat in the atmosphere. If the amount of carbon dioxide is like 0.03% by volume in the overall atmosphere, that is okay. But if this is crossing this limit, the natural greenhouse balance will get disturbed. If the CO2 amount is increasing, means what? More amount of heat will be trapped, and that is what will be contributing for the global warming. So natural greenhouse phenomena, it will maintain the warmth, it will maintain the temperature of the atmosphere to be sufficient level. But if the amount of these greenhouse gases is changed means it is because of the human activity, it is obviously increasing. So that will be leading to what? More amount of heat being trapped. Now besides carbon dioxide, right, we have methane, water vapor, nitrous oxide. As I said, nitrous oxide is N2O. Then we have chlorofluorocarbons, freons we can call them, ozone. We talked about the carbon dioxide. Methane, right, we also call it as what? Marsh gas. So where do we obtain it? So we can obtain large amounts of the methane, right, from the paddy fields, coal mines, as well as from the rotting garbage dumps, and of course along with the fossil fuels. In fact, if you look at the natural gas, natural gas in that sense, right, is majorly what? It is majorly methane. Chlorofluorocarbons, right, they are man-made. So they are used for air conditioning, and also we'll talk about the chlorofluorocarbons as we get into the other effect that they will cause, which is the depletion of the ozone layer. So the chlorofluorocarbons, as I said, right, they will also be responsible for what? The depletion of the ozone layer. There we'll talk about what are the other uses of the but nowadays, because of these harmful effects of the chlorofluorocarbons, they are now being replaced. So nitrous oxide, right, that of course occurs naturally in the environment, and even the use of chemical fertilizers, because we'll have nitrate fertilizers, right? So use of chemical fertilizers, even burning of fuels, fossil fuels, that is all adding to the amount of nitrous oxide in the atmosphere. And if like look at the contribution, right, the relative contribution of the various gases for the global warming, the major contributor is carbon dioxide, then we have methane, then chlorofluorocarbons, then nitrous oxide. So if these trends are continuing, the amount of nitrous oxide, amount of CO2 all are increasing, then it will be leading to a substantial increase in the temperature, and that will cause melting of the polar ice caps, which means what? The overall sea level will be increasing. So the low-lying areas all over the earth, right, some of the islands itself might vanish, means they will be completely covered by the sea. And this will lead to increase of temperature that can cause, because there will be some, pathogens which might be more active at a higher temperature. So infectious diseases like, maybe dengue, malaria, yellow fever, sleeping sickness. So if you are a bio student, you will get to understand about what are the symptoms of each of the diseases and what are the causes and how do we cure, etc. But here that is not required for us, but just to get a sense of what are all the effects of the global warming. So this is what will be the outcome of the global warming, which is not something that we would want. So which means there has to be efforts to curtail the change in the atmospheric concentration levels of these greenhouse. So the next part of the environmental pollution, we will talk about the concept of acid rain. Acid rain is a broad term that is used for the substances which are having acidic nature. Typically, we're talking about the sulfuric acid and nitric acid reaching from the atmosphere to the earth. We'll see what are the different ways in which you can see in the diagram itself. We'll talk about this also. There are different ways in which they can reach the surface of the earth. But generally talking, right, when you look at the normal rainwater itself will have a pH of less than 7. So we have studied in the ionic equilibrium, right, at 25 degrees Celsius, because that is important. If you have a pH of less than 7, that means what it is, the substance with the acidic nature. We can see the value of the rainwater pH is what? 5.6. So these values are important because in the beginning of the session itself we have said that often we'll have questions straight picked up based on the values for various things that they will mention in the environmental chemistry chapter particularly. So when you have the rainwater, basically it will be able to dissolve the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now whether there are other oxides or not, definitely there will be carbon dioxide. So when the carbon dioxide is dissolved in the rainwater, it will form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid, H2CO3, at the end of the day is acid. It will be able to produce, it's a mild acid. So it will produce H plus ions, and the presence of the H plus ions, right, is the reason for the mild acidic nature of the rainwater. And when we look at the presence of other oxides like sulfur or nitrogen, when they are dissolved in the rainwater, right, we will see that definitely the rainwater will become more acidic, which means what? The pH will become less than 5.6. So such a rainwater, right, which is having a pH value of less than 5.6, that is what we will be calling as the acid rain. But as such, right, as I said before, the acid rain word is used to indicate a lot of ways in which the acid from the atmosphere is deposited onto the earth's surface. We will mainly talk about two categories. One is the dry deposition, second is the wet deposition. So we have oxides of nitrogen, sulfur, which are acidic in nature. When they are blown away by the wind along with the solid particles, because the troposphere has got a lot of solid particles. And if it is finally settling down on the ground, right, that's what we will be calling it as the dry deposition. The wet deposition is basically when it is coming to the earth in water or in the fog or in snow. That is what we will be calling as the wet deposition. So we can see here, like, when this acid is coming along with the dust particles, it will have a dry fallout. So dry fallout will majorly cause the damage to the vegetation. It can also come as a wet fallout, where it will be coming along with the fog or in the form of acid rain or in the form of the acid snow. So how does this acid rain occur? It's basically a byproduct of whatever the human activities that we are doing, which will be emitting the oxides of sulfur and nitrogen into the atmosphere. So how do we get oxides of sulfur and nitrogen? By the burning of fossil fuels, because fossil fuels contain sulfur and nitrogen, whether it is the coal or oil power stations, furnaces, the petrol and diesel motor engines. Okay, so all these will be able to contribute for the release of oxides of sulfur and nitrogen. We talk about sulfur dioxide and NO2. They get oxidized and further reacting with the water. That will be leading to the formation of the corresponding acids. So these two are the major contributors for the acid rain, the oxides of sulfur and oxides of nitrogen. Now here, if you look at the overall reaction, right, so we'll have the sulfur dioxide getting oxidized and then dissolving in the rainwater to give us what? The sulfuric acid. Similarly, nitrogen dioxide getting oxidized, dissolving in the rainwater to give us what? Nitric acid. So these reactions, right, the oxidation part is catalyzed by the particles present in the atmosphere. Even sometimes, right, while we can have the oxides coming down in the form of the corresponding acid, you can also have the corresponding ammonium salts being formed, and they can be seen as an atmospheric haze. So atmosphere will have the aerosol of these fine particles. Aerosol, we'll talk about these words when we go to the chapter surface chemistry in +2. So we will call it as a colloid. So solid particles which are dispersed in the air, that is what is the aerosol. Now these aerosol particles of oxides as well as the ammonium salts in the raindrops, right, they will result in the wet deposition also. So if you look at the SO2 can even be directly absorbed both by the solid surface of the earth as well as the liquid ground surfaces. And when it is directly absorbed, it will be coming as a dry deposition. So wherever there is no involvement of water or snow or fog, we will call it as what? Dry deposition. Wherever there is involvement of water or snow or fog, we will call it as wet deposition. So what are the effects of the acid rain? Of course, it is harmful for the agriculture. So when we have the acid rain happening, all these nutrients which are needed for the plant growth, they will get washed away. They will dissolve in the acid and then they will get washed away. And it can cause respiratory ailments for human beings as well as the other animals also. And the acid rain, when it is flowing into the groundwater and the other water bodies like rivers and lakes, right, it can affect significantly the plants and animals which are in the aquatic ecosystem. And even when this water, the rainwater is pumped through the pipes, right, it can corrode the water pipes, and that can make some of these heavy metals like iron, lead and then copper to come into the drinking water, and that can cause harmful effects. And even one of the very popular things that we'll see as a small case study also is it can damage the buildings, because buildings were made up of marble, right? they can get corroded or they can get disfigured. We'll talk about the example of the Taj Mahal. So Taj Mahal, the marble of the Taj Mahal construction, right, that is severely affected by the acid rain that is caused, because the surrounding area is around, we have I think 2000 plus factory units in the vicinity of Taj Mahal, and the pollutants, whether it is oxides of sulfur, nitrogen, that are emitted by these large scale industrialization that is happening in the cluster around Agra, it has resulted in the formation of the acid rain. And the acid rain reacts with the marble stone. So calcium carbonate is a component of the marble stone, so it will react with it, and then it will be damaging. So when the marble stone is reacting, it will cause damage. So basically the structure, right, the marble has lost its luster, and even it got decolorized. So then, in 1995, right, Government of India has set up an action plan to prevent this disfiguring of the Taj Mahal. And for that, to begin with, right, there is one Madura refinery. So I mean, all these things might not be asked in the examination, but just to understand. So that's a very large scale refinery. They have taken steps to check the emission of the toxic gases from their side. Not just that, there is an plan that is made to reduce the emission of pollutants from this Taj trapezium. So it includes the towns of Agra, Firozabad, Madura, and then Bharatpur. So these four towns, right, which has got around 2000 polluting industries, they have been advised to switch over from the use of the coal, oil, etc. to less emission fuels like natural gas or LPG. So even the households in these localities, they have been asked to for the domestic cooking purposes to start using LPG. Even the vehicles that are plying on the highways in the vicinity near Taj, they are encouraged to use low sulfur content diesel. So all these things have been arranged so as to make sure that the emission of the oxides of sulfur and nitrogen will be reduced. But of course, at the end of the day, while there can be an action plan and all these things, only when it is properly implemented, we will be able to start seeing the results. Of course, you might be aware that there is a lot of restoration work also that happens in terms of these monuments, trying to give them some sort of an constructional fine touch, etc., so that we will be able to at least make sure that whatever is there will not get damaged any further, even though there is an acid rain that is happening, because in one day we cannot completely cut off all the emissions. So definitely there is going to be some kind of an acid rain phenomena that we are going to see further also. So there have been measures that have been taken at the monument also, so as to minimize the damage that can be caused further. So this is about the case study of Taj Mahal and the damage that is caused by the acid rain. So with this we are concluding the part 1 of this, and we will see the part 2.